Okay, thank you all for joining. We're going to go on and get started here and talk a little bit about the amazing work in Connecticut. I know that I'm super excited to be joined by Sinthia Sone-Moyano and Dr. Shuana Tucker from Connecticut, who will be joining us in a moment to talk about their experiences in Connecticut. And I think that you are going to find that they bring a wealth of knowledge about the amazing work that Connecticut is doing to build out a robust future teacher pipeline, which will lead to certainly solving shortages in Connecticut. But before we turn it over to them, I'm going to share a little bit of the research. Well, and John, actually, if you'll go to the next slide. And as we all know, there are many districts facing shortages and around the nation, and it's an important time to make sure that we are investing in these pipelines. The need for teachers obviously is increasing, but the need for teachers is outpacing the number of available and qualified teachers. And you can see some of the great research that's going on at teachershortages.com about that. But the national shortage trend that we're seeing is certainly detrimental to individual districts and regions, and the shortage is different by the type of position that we have and in each of the locations. And then teacher pay and workforce conditions are also playing a huge role in the shortage that we're seeing around the nation. And the growing interest in the education profession and getting students thinking about being educators early in middle school and in high school is certainly a solution that's going to make a huge difference. And it's a solution that the folks in Connecticut have decided to focus on. And I'm sure you've all heard this stat that we often talk about here at Educators Rising, but 60% of teachers end up teaching within 20 miles of where they went to high school. And so, when I was a district superintendent, even as far back as 2011, we were constantly thinking about how we might recruit out of state to bring more teachers into our community, or how we might bring in teachers from the districts around us with better compensation packages. And all of those are great strategies. But ultimately, one of the best strategies that you can have to improve the pipeline of teachers into your community is to recruit students from within your community. And my first superintendency in 2011 was actually with a district where it was extremely rural. It was actually isolated from a lot of the major cities and universities. And it wasn't just 60% of the teachers in that community that ended up becoming teachers. It got to be closer to 80 and 90% of teachers in some schools that were at least grew up within 20 miles of that school. And so one of the things that we focus on at Educators Rising is making sure that we have plans that are very intentional to bring students back to the community. And so I want to talk a little bit about what we know about the work going on in Connecticut, because it's really, really been impressive. So one of the things that Connecticut was really intentional about is that they were focusing on not one-time solutions, not quick fixes. They wanted sustainable solutions that speak to the root causes of the teacher shortage. So, obviously they began working together as early as 2019 and 2020, even before the pandemic further exacerbated these issues, to think about how we can increase funding for the program and be really intentional about bringing a lot of expertise into the state to make a difference. And Connecticut was expanding and investing and cultivating future educators through very direct programmatic supports. Dr. Tucker, good to see you. It's so good for you to be with us.
I am happy to be in the room finally.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And we were actually just transitioning to our talk about Connecticut. And so their progress in Connecticut has been amazing. And what we have seen is that it is a replicable model that's not just possible in Connecticut, but in other places. And because of the great success that we've seen in Connecticut, and they have some of our very best chapters in the nation, from New Britain to many, many others in Connecticut. We've seen that focus on high school and middle school is making a difference. And the studies that we've seen by others has just been incredible. So I wanted to just tee us up a little bit, and you guys jumped on just at the perfect time because I was just getting to the moment where I was going to have you talk a little bit about Connecticut and the work that you've been doing. And so Sinthia and Shuana, while I was waiting for you to jump, I skipped the slide where we went through your full and amazing leadership titles in Connecticut. So what I'm going to do as kind of a pivot here is I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves and your role in Connecticut. And then what I would love to hear you talk about is how the teacher shortage is affecting districts in Connecticut. And so I'll turn it to you now.
Great. Hello, everyone. Cynthia Sone-Moyano, Deputy Commissioner of Educational Supports and Wellness here with the State Department of Education. And so here in Connecticut, we are experiencing many of the same profound effects that most of the nation is impacted with, right? And it's impacting our school districts, making it very challenging for our districts to handle the shortage. How, and it's been impacting our school districts is increased class sizes, which at time can take away from that one-on-one attention that students truly need. Higher workloads at times for some teachers, which could create turmoil in the school setting, especially if you have a shortage and you have to fill so many sections. Not always, it also means if you have subs, you may not always have the most qualified individual in front of the students on a day-to-day basis. And this eventually impacts programming from special ed services, advanced placement courses. We've been seeing a lot of courses getting cut if you don't have the right staffing. And then it can also affect our extracurricular activities that we provide students. And so it's creating some disparities across our state. And it's also increasing pressure for our staff. And we know that post-COVID, our teaching staff are really affected by many, many things that is affecting a lot of our students. And so at times can cause some emotional distress. So we're feeling some of the same impacts that the nation is feeling for sure.
Great. And Dr. Tucker, I'll ask the second question and feel free to jump in on how the shortage is impacting as well. But I actually got this question in a webinar yesterday where folks were like, hey, when you implement a new program in a state, what's the reception by district superintendents and principals about Educators Rising as a solution, and how do they feel about how it's working?
I'll be happy to respond. I'm Shuana Tucker. I'm the Chief Talent Officer at the State Department of Education. Thanks for having us. I'll be honest, we started this program in 2000, which was right at the beginning of the pandemic. So the reception was not the best, and that is understandable. Because at that time, superintendents and districts were faced with major challenges. The focus was more on the short term, meaning how do I get teachers in my classrooms now to cover classes? Um, but once we got beyond the pandemic, superintendents began to see Educators Rising as a long-term viable opportunity to grow and develop students into educators that hopefully one day will return to their districts to work. Um, excuse me, what we all know is that it takes time. And so on average, 4 to 6 years, but we know that it is well worth the investment. It is also one of the ways that we are addressing trying to close the teacher shortage and to diversify our educator pipeline here within Connecticut.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to pivot a little bit here and just talk about what Educators Rising is for those that may be new, and why grow your own programs are important and what the benefits are. And then I'm going to come back to a few more questions for our amazing Connecticut leaders here in a moment. But Educators Rising is a career and technical education program that is paired with a career and technical student organization. So we deliver to the community what we call the 5 C's of Educators Rising. First, there's a curriculum where students can study in a full 2 or 4 year completer series. Many of your states require students to graduate with a completer in CTE, and you can do that through Educators Rising. Our curriculum was created in partnership with the major teacher labor unions. It was created with the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. It was created in alignment with major career and technical education career clusters. And essentially, we offer that curriculum to ensure that students have the strongest knowledge of what it takes to become an educator and a teacher. We also not only teach them about pedagogy and content knowledge, but we also focus on educator professions generally. So we talk to them about what school administration is like and what the support personnel positions can look like. But that alignment that we put in our curriculum to the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards means that we're not just preparing the next generation of teachers, we're preparing the next generation of National Board certified teachers. Then our students become a part of chapters where they can be leaders in their community. We develop their leadership skills. We develop their further knowledge of education. They can get into internship and tutoring and other types of experiences. I was talking with a student actually from Connecticut yesterday on a webinar for the 1 Million Teachers of Color campaign. And that student was talking about how he volunteers in early childhood classes or tutors other kids in the community. And the chapter model is amazing. And then those students can become officers at the state level and eventually maybe even officers at the national level at our national conference that John talked about on the slide earlier today. And then from our chapters, our students can go to our conferences. I had the distinct pleasure of going to the Connecticut State Conference this year. I think that was the first in-person conference that we had had. We had had some virtual conferences through the pandemic. And one of my favorite experiences at the conference is there's a competition called the Educators Rising Moment. And you get to go in there and students tell the story of the moment that they knew they wanted to become a teacher. And I'm telling you, it was emotional, it was passionate. And if you see that at the national conference, it's even more amazing. And then that at those conferences, again, that's the next C, the students get to be a part of competitions. And there's lesson plan design, there's children's book authoring, there's whiteboard and project-based design, and just a whole host of amazing competitions. And many of those competitions are offered not only in English, but in Spanish language, which really makes it even an opportunity for our students to show their skills in different ways. And then finally, the fifth C of Educators Rising is the community that we build. Since we launched Educators Rising in 2015, and if you don't know about our program, we used to be Future Educators of America and Future Educators Association. Educators Rising was the rebrand of that. But since 2015, when we rebranded the name of those programs, we have put over 300,000 students into education opportunities in their future. And on an annual basis, we have over 1,100 chapters and over 25,000 students in our program nationwide. And so what we tell people all the time, that they'll say to us, do you start chapters first or do you get the curriculum and the course going first? And the answer is whatever's best for your community. A lot of folks will buy the curriculum and get their chapters started after they bring the curriculum to the community. And in many other states, and I think Connecticut was more this way, they got a bunch of chapters going, and then some of the districts, through the support of an anonymous donor, have been able to add on the amazing curricular opportunities. But one of the big things about the way that we approach Grow Your Own is that it really does an amazing job of diversifying the pipeline, because you're focusing on building teachers from your community. And what we say is if you're recruiting students directly from your community to become teachers, then your teachers are going to end up looking like your community. And so ultimately, that stat that I shared with you earlier, that 60% of teachers end up teaching within 20 miles of school, is huge. And it means that and what we find in our program is that 52% of students nationwide are students of color. Well, because we mirror the communities that our students come from, Educators Rising is diversifying the field, and 53% of the future teachers in Ed Rising are also students of future teachers of color. And so the last thing I want to talk about is the putting Educators Rising in place is just a couple steps in what is really what we like to call the 10-step process to building a Grow Your Own program. And Connecticut started as an example with steps 1 and 2, and they've built out way more of these opportunities since 2019 and since 2020 and since the pandemic. And then some states implement parts of this, but not all of it. But we like to talk about all of these steps being an opportunity that you can see. So what you'll see here is that starting a chapter and getting the curriculum in place and the competitions and the conferences, the 5 C's, those are really the first 2 steps. We've talked about that. One of the big things that we promote at Educators Rising's national office, we host the first week of May, happens to be during Teacher Appreciation Week, a National Student Signing Day, where just like football players or anyone else, our students get to announce that they're going to invest their lives in a career of teaching. And a lot of our districts have started to add to that by guaranteeing students contracts if they graduate from college and come back to the community. Now, they put all kinds of caveats in those contracts, like you have to have available positions and all that. But that's amazing. And then a lot of states in step 4 are starting to think differently about the way that we fund teachers. You know, a lot of people are saying, if you're going to give this service to the United States, you shouldn't have to take on debt to become a teacher. And so we spend a lot of time developing the students' use of the FAFSA form. In Connecticut, they do an amazing loan subsidy program that you may hear a little bit about later. But then we make sure that they're aware of the federal loan forgiveness program as well. And then there's now just a huge movement through apprenticeships and other ways to get students funded for their degrees. Then steps 5 and 6 are basically 2 options for students. You either go right to college and study teaching, which is the more traditional pathway, or you can go right into the field as a paraprofessional and earn your degree while working. And that's become the new apprenticeship model that a lot of folks are talking about. And there's a great group at the National Center for Grow Your Own that can really help you intensively think about how you can build out an apprenticeship model. Educators Rising is a pre-apprenticeship model and a youth apprenticeship model, and we are a feeder to any type of pathway that you're building in your community. Then the other big thing that we do is we make sure that kids can student teach back home so that they get that full grow your own experience whenever we can. Not every university will agree to that, but we see that that actually builds a lot more sustainability for the kids when you do that. Then, of course, the kid graduates, we get them a job back in their home district, and finally, they can be that future Educators Rising mentor. And that's the 10 steps to grow your own in a nutshell. So I want to stop there, because I want to pivot now to Sinthia and Shuana, who are going to talk about Connecticut and tell you a little bit more about how Connecticut took these concepts that we build out nationally and built one of the most robust versions of it right in Connecticut. So Sinthia, Dr. Tucker, feel free.
Right. Thank you so much, James. I'll give you a little bit of our history from 2020 as to where we are now. Educators Rising is part of a broader, what we call the Connecticut 616 Educator Pathway to Grow and Diversify here within the state of Connecticut. Diversification and growth is a part of our strategic plan. We started first with an assessment of grow your own programs here within the state. When I became chief talent officer and before we brought on Ed Rising, kind of wanted to get a sense and a feel for what was really happening within the state. Did districts have grow your own programs? And what I found was few districts had grow your own programs, most did not. And nothing was aligned. It was kind of all over the place. Everyone was kind of doing their own thing. And so with me being exposed to Ed Rising prior to coming to this position at the state, I knew about the program, what it had to offer, and I was actually able to see it in action. And so I did make a recommendation that we adopt Ed Rising as our statewide grow your own model. Having said that, at that time, Secretary Cardona was our commissioner. He fully supported implementation of Ed Rising. Governor Lamont supported us, as well as our educator preparation programs. And today we still have that support, which has now expanded to our current commissioner, our legislators, and to our unions. So that's again more support that we've gained. Really by people understanding and knowing what Ed Rising is and how we've rolled this out. So in 2020, we started with 8 districts, as I said earlier, and that was, of course, during COVID. But since that time, we have steadily grown over the years. We have held virtual statewide competitions. This year was our first in person. Through our partnership with Central Connecticut State University, they have hosted every statewide competition that we've had. The first three were virtual, and it has truly given our students an opportunity to get to know one another and to compete, because we did not want them to be slighted or to feel slighted during the pandemic by not having a statewide competition. And throughout the 4 years, we have had support from, again, the governor, Congresswoman, Johanna Hayes, and many others that have come to speak to our students, provide remarks, which was also a strategy and a way for us to get the word out about Ed Rising and what we were doing in the state with our political figureheads and those who could help us to make a difference and bring impact. So that brought about awareness. Also, we established a statewide student cabinet in 2023, and the statewide student cabinet are our statewide officers. We meet with them, we provide some training for them. One of the trainings is on parliamentary procedure, leadership development, how to run your meetings effectively. We also spend time with them, and they visit. This past week, we visited with our education chair at the Legislative Office Building, where they had an opportunity to meet him, speak with him about their issues, and also find out what was his agenda for education and ask questions. They work with us. We have two that work with us as interns. Excuse me. And in other capacities, we host an Increasing the Educator Diversity Symposium on an annual basis. The students help us to plan that. We offer Ed Rising PD twice a year. Students are an integral part of that. So we integrate our students into all of the work that we are doing with Ed Rising. They manage social media for us. And also, we have Teach Connecticut, which is a partner here with us. And all of the work that we're doing with Ed Rising is also, excuse me, amplified on that website as well, so that people really know who we are and what we're doing. So I would say from 2020 until about 2023, you have to collect data. And we did collect data. And I think it's the data that made the difference. And now people could see that we were starting to move the needle. So as a result of that, we were able to show that we had more students that were interested in the field of education entering into our EPP and community colleges within the field and wanted to obtain degrees. And so we were able to receive funding, $500,000 to be exact, in the form of what we called Ed Rising mini grants. We offered those in two different categories. To onboard and attract new districts to the program, we offered a $10,000 grant. For our existing districts, we offered $5,000 for expansion grants. And we did ask our districts to focus if they were expanding on other areas, such as pushing down to the middle school and starting an after-school program there, possibly consider focusing on EL students, and also males of color entering your Ed Rising Club or your program. We've gotten a great reception. We offered the grants for this year, and we are finishing up our process for this coming school year for the 24-25 year. And I am pleased to say at this point, it looks like we will have 40 plus districts that will be joining us. So we've gone from 8 in 2020, and we're now approaching over 40 in 2024, going into the 25 school year. The other thing that I think has helped us also this past year, monies were allocated for what's called the Aspiring Educators Diversity Scholarship. That money was put forth, and it is for any student of color who graduated from a priority school district. That was for this past year. Excuse me, moving forward, it's for any student graduating from an Alliance school district, so that will expand our pool. If you are majoring in education, we can provide you up to $10,000 annually to cover your tuition at your respective university here within the state of Connecticut. We started off trying to market the program. We had 29 scholars during the fall. We have over 50, 53 or 54 for this spring. And we know in the fall that number is going to grow now that those funds have been expanded to our Alliance district. So we have a variety of things now that I think are helping us. So we started small, but by being able to tell our story to the right people and bring awareness of this program statewide to various districts, and now to have resources to assist us to do this, that is one of the main reasons that we've seen the growth within our Ed Rising program.
Yeah, thank you. I just a couple follow-ups for you here. Your program has grown extremely quickly. What kind of messaging or promotion did you do at the department to help with adoption in schools? And if there's anything else you want to talk about in terms of the recent growth, I'd love to hear more about that. But how did the department really play a role in getting folks excited about this?
Think that there are several things that we did, James. First, we looked internally. We looked at our data, and we knew that Connecticut had a major disparity between students of color and educators of color, which you spoke to earlier. In our state at that time, when we started, 18.9% of our students were enrolling in EPPs were persons of color, and the majority were females. Part of our strategic plan, one of our goals is to diversify the educator workforce. And so we also saw this program as an opportunity to help us to achieve and attain that goal. I would also like to state that through legislation, this is the first year that all of our districts have also been asked to submit diversity plans. So Connecticut is taking diversity very seriously. And this is a way that we've been able to promote Ed Rising as a grow your own program to help you as a district to diversify and to close the gap. We've also spent time highlighting many of our teacher leaders and students on our website and via social media, through our professional learning communities, through the statewide competition. Anytime we have an activity or something that is relative or going on to Ed Rising, we make sure that we publicize it with all of our partners, all of our organizations that we work with. And that has helped us to get the word out, and especially with our tech partner, Teach Connecticut, who really runs all of our education-based information on their website. At the symposium, we've highlighted our students, provided scholarships, and I think basically the supports that are offered through the professional development and the curriculum. We do have an anonymous donor, and that donor has also contributed to the salary of two persons that work directly with us. That's our regional and state coordinator, as well as our curriculum coordinator. I have to say, we would not be able to do the work that we do to really expand the program and the messaging solo at the state. And so working with those two persons, I think has been just a great value added for us to be able to expand our program here within the state. And so the word is, it's getting out. We also have potential districts who are interested in the program that we can pair up with a district that has implemented the program. And many times they will go and do site visits to actually see it in action, talk to students, talk to teachers to see how this was implemented, how's it's going. And I think that that has really helped as well.
I would also add, I think you pretty much covered everything, Shuana, but I can tell you that the biggest promoters are the students who are participating in the program. They're your biggest advocates. We were just with them this week, and they're in front of the legislators, and they're advocating at press conferences, at meetings with their legislators, indicating how it's influenced them and how it's made an impact in their lives. And I mean, you can't market any more than having those who are affected by this work. The other piece I can speak to from a district perspective is that having this blueprint that PDK provides through the Ed Rising program is important for the schools, because one of the things that we also provide is resources monetarily, but also the curriculum that's there, the blueprint is there. And so someone at a district can pick this up and really kind of kick the ground running with it. And that's important because as we started this webinar, we're facing an era in our profession where there's a shortage. And I think this brings hope, inspiration, and also that blueprint that schools need to continue expanding and enhancing their programs.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you were talking about meeting with students, and that really got me thinking. We're meeting students who are just telling us incredible stories about this calling they have to teach. What's some of the other evidence that you're seeing that bringing educators rising to your state was the right thing to do?
I think just seeing that the program has expanded from what Dr. Tucker indicated, we started with 8 districts and we're currently with 23 school districts, over 500 students. You know, students want to join, students want to be part of it. We wouldn't have had the rapid expansion if it wasn't a program that exists that people connect with. And I think that's the important piece, as well as we have some champions like Congresswoman Jahana Hayes really promoting this. You know, she's going to be at our next convening next week, our conference next week. And so they're there. Our legislators are front and center, our governor as well, in providing us with the monetary resources that districts need. And so I think that's very important to make sure that we highlight and that, you know, we promote.
And I'll add that we have students, because we spend a lot of time speaking with our Ed Rising students and asking them questions and hearing from them, that have said that, you know, some of them didn't consider going into the education profession at all until they got to high school, freshman year, and they learned about Ed Rising and they joined the club. And it really started to pique their interest. While you have others who coming in said, "Oh, I think I want to, you know, become a teacher or a social worker," and so the club was a perfect fit for them to continue expanding upon what they felt that they wanted to do. So I think it serves two purposes. And we've heard from students in both of those tracks, those who had never considered pursuing education as a career. And I think that that's really a testament in both ways of the work of the club, the curriculum, and what Ed Rising can do, especially when you have a really strong teacher leader. I have just seen it blossom at many of our districts around the state. One recently just had their signing day, and it is just outstanding. They make it very, very special. Parents are there, the superintendent's there. And so for us, to me, that's the beauty of it all, talking to the students and really them sharing their journey and their stories with not just us, but with everybody.
Yeah, and a question actually popped into the Q&A chat that was something that you just talked about. So I thought I'd go on and ask it now rather than wait till the end. But what is the source of the mini grants you're offering to start or enhance the program?
We have right now a portion of our ESSER funds that were dedicated to the mini grants, as well as we have state funding that has also been dedicated in another strand for our alliance districts called IED funding, increasing educator diversity. Those funds can also be used to support educators rising, and alliance districts within our state can also use their traditional alliance funding to support this as well. But that's where the funding came from for the mini grants. But it is our intent moving forward for our next legislative session to request funding moving forward to continue supporting educators rising in the state. And hopefully it will become a line item.
Great. Well, one more question, then I'm going to do a little bit of information about how to get started with Ed Rising. And then we're going to open questions to the audience. So be thinking about more of those questions, y'all, while we kind of wrap a few more points we want to share with everyone. But what's the support for Educators Rising been like with teachers in Connecticut? Have you found that your teachers, not only of the program, but teachers in the broader education community are supportive of the movement to grow future teachers from the high school?
I would say that so far it has been a very good response. Teachers are engaged, they're eager to learn more. We have one of our larger teacher unions here that works with us because we want to ensure that there's a smooth transition for our students from the nurturing support that they receive from those teachers in high school once they move on to college and join the Aspiring Educators program. What I will say to that, for this to be successful in your district, you not only need the support of a caring teacher and a teacher leader who wants to implement this program, but that teacher needs to have the support of their principal as well as staff at the central office. What I will say is we learned a valuable lesson early on, and that is we did not have the support that we realized we needed to have to implement this from central office staff down to the school building level. Working at the school building level is great, but you have to have the support of either a superintendent, assistant superintendent, or your chief talent officer within your school district so that everything is aligned, they see the connection, and it helps to really support the teacher leader in their role for the program.
Yeah, you made a great point there where one of the things we always encourage around the nation is as you're picking the perfect teacher to teach your future teacher program or your Educators Rising program, make sure to pick that teacher that, I joke that they're the Ron Clark-esque, stand on the desk, get kids excited, motivate, because those are the people that are going to get kids in the program. And ultimately, that inspiration of getting kids into the program is essential. But you have to build that kind of chapter piece hand in hand with it, because what I found is, the thing that made me love school, I was a band director, was playing music and being in band. But for a lot of kids, it's some other extracurricular activity. And you mentioned that Secretary Cardona was your former state commissioner. One of the things he talks about is we need to make sure that every kid has an extracurricular opportunity. Well, Educators Rising is that thing for some kids, and it's the thing that really draws them into school. Plus, they get to go to these competitions and conferences, and we're in DC this year. We'll be in Disney World next year, and so those opportunities just really draw kids into your program. So
James, I just wanted to add that we had a commissioner roundtable with teachers of the year just last week. And one of the teachers of the year from a huge urban district said, because we were just asking them, what else do we need to do, right? How do we support you on? They're like, we need more Ed Rising. We need more funding for Ed Rising. As a teacher leader, I wish I had that. What it brings to my students is that representation that some of my students need. And they can see themselves in the teachers. Then I had other teachers who explained that this is that pre-apprenticeship, and that's important because a lot of what they're seeing with newer teachers who haven't had this experience is that they're facing many challenges when they walk into that classroom beyond what they've learned, at their EPPs, and if they've had exposure early on in that mentoring and the connection to an actual classroom, to a mentor teacher, their success rate of staying in the field is higher. And so they connected Ed Rising to that. And I just thought it was just right on time, right? Because what they're asking for, I had one of them say, every district should have a specific teacher assigned to be the coordinator. Put funding in that arena. So they're the ones advocating for it. They truly are. And this was literally last week. So it's hot out off the press. They're seeing the importance of it and what the impact it can truly have in districts.
Wow, what an amazing and timely story. Thank you actually for jumping in and sharing that. It's amazing to hear what the folks in our community are telling us about what's making a difference. So thank you for that. Well, we're going to jump to audience questions here in a second, but one of the questions we always get is, where do you start? And the first thing that we say is start with a chapter. All you need is one teacher leader and one student in your school to start a chapter. And we basically have almost no cost for this. It's $15 per student to start a CTSO. And that's so minimal in the broad context of the impact that having a chapter in your community can have. And so by being in a chapter, your students can go to the state events, the competitions, the national competitions, of course, this amazing state competition. And even if you're not from Connecticut, we likely have a competition in your state. We have state affiliates in 38 states, but we have presence in all 50 states. Then after you get chapter started in your school, the next thing that we recommend is that you make sure you develop your course materials and that co-curricular experience with a strong curriculum during the day. I've mentioned our curriculum aligned to national standards already. It's flexible to be used not only in 1 year, 2 years, 4 years. We've actually designed it where you can teach it 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 5 days a week, whether you're on the block schedule or the everyday schedule. We've designed all of that to make it easier for your teachers. And in addition to our curriculum and our national standards, we've actually developed day-by-day lessons that teachers can use to build out the curriculum. And then we want to make sure that you join us every May for our National Signing Day. Each spring, and again, we do it in May, we want to make sure that we're uplifting the profession and celebrating those seniors who have made that decision to put their life into education. And so, definitely take that week and that special time to offer students that opportunity to come back and tell you about what they've learned. And I actually did a panel in Seattle last week where we brought back a student who was going to school while working in her public school where she was originally an Ed Rising student, and is getting her teaching degree while serving as an in-school suspension coordinator. Another student was at the local university right there in Central Washington and was preparing to become a teacher. And all of them just love coming back and talking about the experiences that they had in Ed Rising. And I know there's nothing that gets kids more excited than hearing from their peers about the opportunities that they have. And of course, I talked a little bit about this in the 10 steps already, but make sure if you're a university partner that you're flexible enough that you allow students to return to teach. I talked about the 60% of students ended up teaching within 20 miles of where they went to high school, but so many students have to student teach within 20 miles of where they go to college. And so giving them flexibility to go back home and build that rapport back in their home community is essential. And nobody understands the unique needs of a community more than someone that came from there and has been there for some time. And so the other thing I would say is make sure that you offer opportunities for student voice. Include students in your pipeline initiative. Make sure that they're helping you think through what the recruitment strategies are to get more kids into your Educators Rising chapter. Make sure that they're part of giving you feedback on where they want to go and do internships and observation hours and how they can engage with students. And make sure that they know that the colleges that they're going to go to will have an aspiring educators or Ed Rising collegiate program so that they have the opportunity to be engaged, not only in high school, but in college. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest breaks in the chain is we actually get a lot of kids interested in Educators Rising and teaching while in high school. But what happens is the first 2 years of college, sometimes those students will not have any education courses or any education experiences in the first 2 years of college. And we lose them by the time they become a junior or senior in their major. And so by building out experiences with your colleges where they stay engaged in education in those first 2 years is essential. And then take advantage of the resources that we offer from nationals. We've got tons of membership supports. We've got a full membership team. Many of them are on the call here. We've got outreach and engagement specialists, and we've got curriculum implementers. And we had an amazing donor, as was mentioned, that helped us build actually a person that just does that for Connecticut and helps build out those programs. There's a number of ways we can support you, and we can actually introduce you to those folks as you're thinking about building this out in your state. And our website has a ton of these resources, which includes model legislation that you can take to your legislature to think about how to grow your own programs in your state. We've got research that supports the effectiveness of a high school pipeline and career pathways program in teaching. And we've got a lot of information about how to build out that ideal pathway. There's a QR code here on the page, as you can see, and then a link, and we'll drop those in the chat as well, should you want to access any of those papers. But before I turn to questions, I do want to remind you to join us this summer in Washington, D.C. We have one of the largest kid conferences in the nation. We have typically averaged somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 kids at our national conference. This year, we're already anticipating over 3,300 kids coming together that are future educators that want to make a difference in their communities. And before that conference, we're actually going to have a policy summit. So if you're a state leader and you want to learn more about how to build policy around grow your own programs, on June 28th from 10 to 1, you can join us and learn more about how not only this is happening in Connecticut, but in other states. And you'll hear from national experts on grow your own programs. And so you can scan there to learn a little bit more about that opportunity and sign up now. But if you come to our policy summit, you have my word. I'll walk around with you. I'll show you our Educators Rising Moment competition. And there's nothing I've seen in all my years of education more inspiring than seeing first generation college students talking about the moment that they knew that they wanted to become a teacher. And if you want more information on Educators Rising and more information on how to learn about our chapters and our curriculum, or just to get a chapter started, John, my colleague, he's got the link to Educators Rising's website here, but we'll actually drop a link straight to our request more information page, and we can link you up with one of our outreach and engagement specialists in your community. And here is contact information for all of the three of us so that you can reach out to us directly. But Dr. Tucker, Deputy Commissioner Sone-Moyano, I want to take a moment and just ask a few more questions from our audience and talk about the magic that we're finding in Ed Rising, and especially at our conferences. And so John has dropped some information for y'all in the chat, but a couple more questions. This is from an individual that asks, we're in an urban setting and find that our students do not aspire to be teachers. Have you found that to be true in urban areas more than rural areas? But I'm gonna pivot that question because there are a lot of urban areas in Connecticut. How have you gotten more urban situated students interested in education?
I think it's twofold to that question. We have a variety of districts. We have large urbans that are involved, we have medium-sized districts, and we have a few smaller districts. I think one, it depends on the teacher leader at that school. They play a critical role in attracting students to the Educators Rising Club and exposing them to what it is all about and the opportunities that could possibly be afforded to them. Secondly, I think it's the students themselves sharing their journey, what they are getting from being a part of the club and why. What I will share is while we are making progress, we don't just stop here because we know that there's still a lot more work to be done. We just recently have received an allocation of funds that will be solely dedicated, and Deputy Commissioner Sone-Moyano has been pushing for this for a while, along with myself, and that is to do a full-blown marketing and branding campaign around promoting the field of education, because we do know that one audience that we have to get to is the audience of parents as well as potential students, potential educators, because there are some misnomers out there about the field of education. And many times our students, of course, listen to who? Their parents. They're their first role model. So if a parent is not speaking very highly or encouraging their child to enter the field of education, we would kind of like to change that perspective, change their perspective rather, hopefully with our marketing and branding campaign, so that hopefully we can see more students in our urban areas and really across the board enter our program.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think everything that you said, Dr. Tucker, but the key three words I would say is exposure, exposure, exposure. Being a teacher myself, I haven't been in the classroom for over 10 years. As much as we think students know certain things, they only have one perception, and we are the biggest advocates, right? And we are the biggest marketers of our profession. And it starts with being intentional too, with how we talk about our profession, how we set up our classrooms to allow them to start taking some of that leadership teacher role, and just exposing them. So I would say exposure, exposure, start with one student, start with a club, and the students will take it from there. They really do.
I think that's wise advice. Our students love to get together and they love to do this work together, and they do a great job of inspiring each other into the field of education. I did a webinar recently where a student told me, look, I always knew I was going to be a teacher. I was the kid that set up my Barbies at the little table in my room and I taught to my Barbies. And then I've met with other students who said, I never thought about being a teacher. And then I got into the chapter and I met my friends and I got to be around kids for the first time and it made a difference. Some of what we're doing here in Ed Rising is just giving students experiences in education so they can see if it's the right thing for them. And, we don't expect that every single kid that comes through Ed Rising is going to become a teacher, but at least they'll have a deeper respect for the profession. And that alone is worth the effort that I think we put into our work. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Dr. Tucker, Deputy Commissioner Sone-Moyano, Thank you for the work you're doing in Connecticut. Thank you so much for really making a difference and really bringing to light how you can build successful pathways with strong state leadership. And both of you are amazingly strong leaders, along with your fabulous commissioner. And I want to announce today that we are releasing a new white paper that is going live after this webinar, and it will be on our website, which you saw the QR code before, that tells this Connecticut story. And it tells the best practices that we learned from the state of Connecticut. I encourage you all to take a look at this. And if you're a state leader thinking about how you can launch Educators Rising statewide in your state, highly recommend that you reach out to Dr. Tucker and Deputy Commissioner Sone-Moyano, because they have absolutely one of the best versions of this in the nation. So thank you both for being with us, and we look forward to being with all of you. Thank you so much. Oh, I see a question. I'm not going to skip a question, y'all. So Beth asks, Florida has aligned more to FEA, but there are some districts in Florida already using the Ed Rising program. Also, I lead a teaching academy. Many of our students leave with an AA degree. Does Ed Rising offer opportunities for college credit? Great question. And actually, I'll even tell you how they did this in Connecticut if I want to open it up to my panelists again. But Future Educators Association is a program that is also led under the umbrella of Educators Rising. Future Educators Association was the name of our organization until we changed it to Educators Rising. Now, Florida came to us and said, hey, we've got a really robust Florida Future Educators program. Can we keep the same name? And then some of it, you know, they broke off separately and started to do some of their own things, and we're fine with that. We just want more teachers. We don't care how that goes. But what I'll say is, yes, there are Educators Rising chapters, and there are Florida kids who, even while in FEA, compete in Educators Rising. In fact, TAFE, the Texas Association of Future Educators, is one of our largest competitors at our national conference. They never use the Educators Rising name, but they come to our competitions and they come to our conferences, and their kids are part of chapters. And you can do that in FEA in Florida as well. And then in terms of can you get dual credit, the answer is absolutely yes. Dr. Tucker, Deputy Commissioner Sone-Moyano, do you want to talk about how you did that in Connecticut? And I can talk a little bit about nationally.
Sure. It's taken us about 2.5 years, but we're finally at that point now. We have 3 education courses that students can enroll in and take at high school. And we are now finalizing those credits being rolled over and accepted into the community colleges as well as our EPP programs. The reason it has taken us a little while, I'll just say, is that the community colleges in Connecticut merged last year into one system. And so they had to make sure that their courses across the board, across the state, were all aligned. And so now that they are, because you can go to any school and it's a standardized curriculum that you take, we also encourage them to consider expanding at the community college level their program, because they only offered early childhood. So now they're offering a general education pathway. And so the courses from high school can transfer to either community college or into an EPP program. That means our students are starting off with 9 hours potentially underneath their belt, which is a half of a semester for many of our students. So they have a jump start.
Yeah, and that model, Beth, that you're asking about for your teaching academy in Florida, we can certainly replicate that in Florida as well. In Connecticut, it's been 9 hours. We have states that offer 12 hours. They'll do 6 hours for each of the years of the course. And then because the students will do youth apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships or observation internship hours, a lot of them can actually get 3 to sometimes 6 more hours just in observation and other ways. And we partner with community colleges, we partner with full EPPs, and frankly, we've got a few universities that are nationwide that actually will offer dual enrollment credit. So if you want to get something like that started, we can certainly make that a part of the associate's degree in your community, so it counts towards the courses that they get in the AA degree. We're happy to help you set that up. You can reach out to Community at Educators Rising, or you can reach out to me directly. I'll put my own email in the chat. But Florida is a place where because they kept the Future Educators Association branding, we're more than willing to step in so folks know we're here to support FEA, just like we support Ed Rising, whether you made the name change or not. And Texas is a great example of how that's going really successfully. So Beth, please reach out to us. And before we hang up here, I will drop my information in the chat. But thank you so much. Well, I know I was wrapping us up a moment ago, and I'm going to just give it one more second, y'all, just to see if any more questions come in. And John, actually, if you'll drop my name in the chat, my computer won't let me actually hit chat while I'm wrapping it up here. But thank you all for joining us again, Deputy Superintendent Sone-Moyano, Dr. Tucker. Again, the story in Connecticut is just phenomenal. I can't thank you enough for taking an hour out of what I know is one of the busiest times to learn and share with our educator community. And to those of you out there, we look forward to helping you build and grow your own program in your community. We'll see you soon.